Hi everyone, and welcome to our new series on burnout prevention and recovery. As this is the introductory video, what we're going to show you today is a documentary from 1991 from Charing Cross Hospital and Medical School in London, UK, where we both trained. And we developed this method on from how it's presented here. We introduced it into depth psychology and psychotherapy, in acute and chronic psychiatry, and in primary healthcare. So it's a little piece of history. You'll see the capnograph being used, and you'll see the very unusual setup there was in this UK NHS hospital. So this is humanistic medicine at its very best, and this forms the bridge between mind and body and how we can help people in depth. So there'll be more videos to follow, and of course we have a free handout as well, which you can download from the description in this video. And we'll see you again in the future when we'll have a whole series based on this, won't we?
We will indeed, yes.
Great. Okay, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
soon.
And see you all soon.
After a heart attack and after the intensive care in hospital, it takes careful rehabilitation to get an individual back into a confident life again. There are several philosophies of treatment. This film is about them, and about life after the attack.
The purpose of cardiac rehabilitation is to get a patient after a heart attack or after heart surgery back to a normal life, or as near normal as possible. So that means their physical well-being and their psychological well-being.
Of all the different treatments, one of the more extreme is at the Charing Cross Hospital in London. Not many medics fully subscribe to what goes on at Charing Cross, yet what they do here has had a huge impact on doctors in the UK. It's based on the idea that the fundamental cause of heart disease is stress and exhaustion, not high cholesterol, blood pressure, and other conventional risk factors. It's the personal philosophy of Dr. Peter Nixon. He believes that a chronically fatigued body loses control of its natural chemical balance, which may then lead to a heart attack.
We can wind each other up to such an extent that the adrenaline's pumping and we start to hyperventilate, and if we're very tired, we are at strong risk for spasm or constriction of arteries within the body. So if I see somebody who's been wound up and put into a stroke illness or a heart illness, then I have to teach him to defend himself. I teach him as much as if he was in the martial arts and had to be able to look at and handle a much larger opponent without going down in a crumpled heap of misery and illness.
One of Dr. Nixon's patients is Dorothy Allen, who had a heart attack in 1987. Her first doctor put her on drugs. Then she had a second attack and came here to Nixon. He took her off the drugs and began to look for causes in the way she lived her life.
Before, you were overloaded, you were undermined, and you were not in sufficient control of your life. So the adrenaline built up and all the other chemicals and put you down and weakened you and exhausted you. Now, you look so much better that I can't believe you're just acting well with those same problems out there. Just went on, stretching the elastic, till it snapped. And the act of snapping is usually by this over-breathing, which causes changes in the heart and makes things go into spasm. It can be asthma, it can be colitis, it can be duodenal spasm, but smooth muscle tubes in the body, like the coronary arteries, the arteries of the brain, can go into constriction. When you're far overstrained, fighting on, and then start to overbreathe with it. Like Ovett at the 1984 Olympic Games, he collapsed today. Yes. So you should regard yourself as a very powerful person, like Ovett.
Nixon first puts a patient to sleep for a week or two. Only when rested does he find that he can get a patient aware of what in their life has exhausted them.
The domestic problems rank very high because it is anger which is the most provocative of all the emotions when it comes to hyperventilating and destabilizing the heart. Anger by far is the most common. Now, men and women in their own lives, in their own societies and hierarchies, traditionally learn to get on pretty well. And so some of the most savage battlegrounds of power are within the house.
For Dorothy Allen, the problems were in her home life. She was living with Angelita, her 18-year-old daughter from a previous marriage. Before her heart attack, she'd married Paul, a shy and gentle man. It was the resentment that Angelita showed towards Paul that placed huge demands on Dorothy.
We didn't have the chance to have a proper relationship because she was always there, and if we went to bed at night, you'd hear her moving around, and then she'd come and barge in the bedroom and all things like that, and it was taking a toll on both of us.
One of those? Got all the bits of it.
The friction increased further when Angelita became pregnant. Her behavior began to disrupt the new marriage.
That one does.
After much soul-searching, Dorothy told Angelita to leave.
It's lovely, isn't it? It wasn't easy then, and it's still not easy now. No, I still find it's pulling at my heartstrings all the time. I wish I could do more for her than what I can do at the moment, but there's so much red tape and nobody let go of anything that, you know, her in the bed and breakfast like she is, in a way, is breaking my heart. I took the advice and they said that I had to be positive and when I make a decision, stick to it.
So be assertive.
That's right.
Be able to say no.
That's right.
Were you terrified?
Yes, I was.
Terrified for your heart?
Yes, and I found it a little bit difficult at first because I felt as if I was pushing her away, and I didn't think people would understand that they'd think that I was a bad mum because of pushing her away.
You don't have to die of a heart attack to prove that you're a good mum.
No.
Good, and I bet she likes you a lot better.
I don't know. She's still a little bit...
She's getting help from you?
She's getting help from me, yeah, but I still have to walk away from her. I can do so much through the day for her, but then I have to walk away and say, right, I'll see you another day.
And live to fight another day.
I think in a way it has made me grow up. You know, I've had to get off my backside and go out and do it for myself. Even though I've got more confidence when my mum's about, but I've had to do it for myself, you know. Even if I was given the option, if my mum turned around and said to me, come home and live with us, you know, with the baby, instead of that place, I still wouldn't, you know. Too much strain on heart, and I think it'd end up killing her, to be truthful, you know, because it'd just be so much worry.
Many people experience musculoskeletal pains a certain number of months before they acquire their cardiac pains, and it fits with gradually going down the curve.
To help heart patients at Charing Cross, the team has a variety of skills. There is, of course, a senior cardiologist, but also important are occupational therapists, osteopaths, hypnotherapists, masseurs, and the sisters and nurses.
The important thing when managing such patients is that you have to have a very big concept of the patient's systems as interacting ones, so that you have to consider who they are, who they're relating to, who has given them false perceptions of the world, who has made them unhappy to relax and to consider it legitimate to rest, who's offending them, who's poisoning them psychologically. Now, if one takes that to Dorothy Allen's case, one sees many ingredients in common. Again, an individual who did not listen to the messages of the body when it protested that it was fatigued and pushed too far. Someone that could not say no to the demands of family and friends and work colleagues. And the whole process with the worsening fatigue, the increased coagulability of the blood which develops in exhausted people who hyperventilate, and the greater tendency towards coronary spasm, eventually after a year to 2 years, culminating in a heart attack.
They see a heart attack like this. As people make an effort to achieve things at home or at work, usually their performance improves as they try harder. But as they get fatigued, so the extra effort produces smaller gains. And if a chronically fatigued person makes greater effort, their performance actually drops. As the person works even harder, they descend a spiral of ill health, which may lead to a heart attack.
We sat down and asked each other what's required to get back up to 100%. And usually we can break it down into 6 parts and tackle each one discreetly. One is sleep, because in our culture many people do not get enough sleep to keep proper, stable, orderly systems inside. The next one is the arousal level, the tension level. The effort and distress of their lives can take them beyond the competence of their internal regulating systems. The next thing is breathing. Remember, Vet collapsed the 1984 Olympic Games because he overstretched himself with effort and distress and then overbreathed. Rather like Becker losing against Edberg at 88 at Wimbledon, you could see it. So the breathing has to be organized, not up here, all nervous and attentive, but in the belly. And knowing how to drop the arousal, drop the tension, to perform in the best possible way, how to breathe well. You've got somebody with a safe chemical system. It's hard then for that to get broken down when they're in command of it.
Nixon uses the acronym SABRES to summarize his treatment. Be sure to get enough sleep. Recognize when you're becoming aroused and tense. Breathe calmly and evenly. Get enough rest. Keep the effort you make within sensible limits. And all of this should create self-esteem. It's the occupational therapist's task to teach these elements.
They tend to work together. If somebody sleeps bad, their arousal's high, their breathing's out of control, they can't balance rest and effort, and their self-esteem's low. And the opposite to that, if their sleep's good, their arousal's low, breathing's in control, they're balancing rest and effort, and they feel well.
Getting them calmer, getting themselves less uptight, enabling them to breathe properly. The breathing is like an amplifier of the emotions. So if you're having a talk with your spouse and he or she starts to go, my God, it shouldn't be like this. You know it's getting beyond dealing. It's getting into an emotional conflict, you see? And then through R&E, the balance of rest and effort, getting people less tired so they can deal with each other like human beings, not like children who've been too long at the seaside. And last of all, by attention to self-esteem. You can get them actually dealing with problems rather than falling into warfare over them. And that is the aim.
An unusual aspect of Charing Cross is that patients come back for retraining in how to breathe and relax. It's 1 year since Dorothy Allen first began rehabilitation.
Should we go through here? I want the tummy to do the moving and this hand to stay still. So it's very calm breathing. So the top hand still. Can you feel the bottom hand? Maybe when you're at home you can put a tissue box on your tummy or just and watch the movement. Well, we've been seeing Dorothy on a regular basis and been keeping an eye on her reactions and interactions within her family life. She has taken on board the concept of SABRES very well now and has lots of insight, and that's, if a person has insight, then they're going to do well, because knowledge dispels fear. If you have knowledge about why a certain thing is happening to you, then you're more equipped to be able to deal with it.
We have very able and very strong therapists from complementary medicine. I said one had to love the heart and nurture it and let it grow and expand in its ability instead of drugging it or whatever. So we have masseurs, Claire Maxwell Hudson, who will put the body into a state of relaxation so the person knows how to how to drop into a relaxed mode We have cranial osteopaths who are very, very able at enabling people to relax, learn what it feels like, and enable them to breathe with their tummy. Some people are so consumed with anger about their upbringing or losing their job and being made redundant twice in a year that they cannot get well and calm their breathing because the anger level is so high. So medical hypnotists can help them very much indeed.
Self-hypnosis is one of the skills taught to achieve a deep state of relaxation.
You find yourself more and more able to think clearly and calmly about your problems. And this makes them easier to deal with. And it helps you to see things in their true and correct perspective, so that you don't magnify difficulties, you see things as they really are, and never let things get out of proportion.
So, Paul, the main thing that you do is to stroke. So you just use your body weight and you gently just stroke down either side of the spine. And just stroke, and your hands are moulding to the body. So you're just easing away any tension. You just let your hands mould. You're really just stroking.
See.
Do you want to have a try?
Yeah. Yes, I'd like to. Yes.
And Dorothy will tell you if it feels similar.
Right.
So you start by stroking.
Around.
That's right, gliding up the sides. And then a bit of slightly more pressure on the top of the shoulders, because that's where people get tense.
Right there.
That's right.
Right.
And
Am I
then...
feeling the same, Dorothy?
No.
No.
What's the difference? Yes, well, I think it's really that here everyone's taught that the importance of relaxation and that they have to bring down the arousal. And something like massage can actually be a demonstration, because so often we're tense, but we don't realize we're tense. We say, oh yeah, I'm fine, I'm fine. And so if you actually massage somebody, they can then feel the difference between a state of relaxation and a state of tension. Well, we're very keen here at Charing Cross to teach people how to massage, because obviously they can't always come to the hospital. So we try and teach either the husband or the wife, or actually I like to teach both, because I think that the person who's well very often needs the massage just as much as the person who's ill, because they've had the anxiety of worrying about the person who's ill. And also I think if one person's receiving all the time, they'd feel rather shy about asking for a massage. And so we try and teach both the husband and the wife to learn about massage, and then they can use it. Well, ideally they give each other a half-hour massage, but even if they're just waiting for the kettle to boil or watching the telly, you can just do a few minutes on the shoulders, and even 5 minutes can stop you from feeling het up and calm you down.
Well, just lie down and make yourself comfortable. Let's start off by put one hand on
At Charing Cross, breathing correctly is not seen as something marginal, but as the key skill to get right.
Where your breathing's coming from, which hand's moving. And we'll start off by counting.
Stuart Sharrock had his heart attack 3 months ago. A publisher and workaholic, his idea of exercise was running for the train. But Dr. Nixon pointed out that it was his attitude to work that had put him on the downslope to ill health.
I think I started to lose control by hindsight, probably about 5 or 6 years ago. Round about that time, I was able to do many things and be extremely active and achieve things in a relatively effective fashion. Looking back on it, from that time, I started to become less and less effective. And the effect of that is that you become more and more worried about the fact that you're not achieving what you knew that you were capable of. And as time goes on, you work harder and harder and harder. You'll throw yourself at it in an attempt to achieve what you used to be able to achieve. But it gets worse and worse and worse. You end up on a long, slippery slope. Looking back over the years at my work behavior and my attitude towards work, I can see many things which I was doing wrong, and I can see in many of my colleagues now. Being always the first to arrive to work, even though you had a much longer journey to work than other people, being the last to leave in the evening on a regular basis is a crazy thing to do. Working 7 days a week, even though maybe on a Sunday you would only work 4 hours and regard that as relaxing, that's a crazy thing to do. Going without lunch on a very regular basis, maybe grabbing a sandwich at your desk, maybe not taking lunch at all, that's a crazy thing to do. Regarding your colleagues who were taking their full holidays, taking their quota of holidays, taking weekends off, having a break at lunchtime, regarding that as a sign of weakness, that's a crazy thing to do. The whole attitude whereby you feel guilty if you're not actually achieving something in a period of time, and you throw yourself at work with that attitude, is absolutely, in retrospect, it's absolutely crazy.
After Stuart's attack, he went first to the Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford, where he was put on drugs.
On the beta-blocking drugs, largely as a preventative measure. And that certainly had a very great effect on me. The beta-blockers made me relax, they made me laid back. I would swan through the days without any problem whatsoever. The one drawback is that I could not really function actively as a human being. I could not really work properly. That was really a very, very frightening prospect. That was a zombie-like existence, and the prognosis was that that would last a long time in the future, perhaps for the rest of my life. That left me in a situation where I had to examine my life, my work, and I was very seriously considering only working part-time, changing the type of job I did, and radically rearranging my whole life to cope with the effect of the drugs and that uncertainty. It was a condemnation, if you like, of a rather low-level existence in the future.
A month later, he came to Dr. Nixon.
Being on the beta-blocker drugs meant that my resistance to pressure was very low. The suggestion for Charing Cross was put to me and rejected by me, but the resulting pressure from the family to do something different was something which I was unable to cope with. So I went along to Charing Cross Hospital, largely to keep my family and my friends quiet. My experience on arrival at Charing Cross was, in fact, very positive. I found Dr. Nixon and his associates there very professional. They clearly knew what they were doing. This was no spurious theory, and certainly something that I felt ought to be taken very seriously.
And this will just monitor your breathing while we have you
At Charing Cross, they believe that overbreathing causes the body to exhale too much carbon dioxide, leading to a thickening of the blood. Incorrect breathing, therefore, is seen as the link between anxiety and the body's chemistry becoming unbalanced.
What I'd like you to do now, Mr. Sharrock, is just to sit back a little, close your eyes, relax. I'm not going to touch you or do anything to you, but I'm going to suggest one or two things that I want you to think about. I want you to take yourself back 3 or 4 years to when you were working in the business with people with whom you didn't get on very well. Just think about the kind of pressures you were under then. Just think about that and how that built up on you. Dr. Nixon developed the think test, which is the exposure of the patient to a personally relevant stressor when sitting in a relaxed condition, as the previous patient was, to see whether hyperventilation could be provoked when the person relived the circumstances of the incident that we felt was probably due to hyperventilation in the first place. And in this patient's case, the level was quite abnormal. We think that that probably indicates a good period of hyperventilation prior to the testing.
Hello, occupational therapy.
Hello, Sarah. It's Stuart Sharrock here.
Hello.
Hi, I've got a couple of questions for you today. The first one concerns the rate of breathing. I'm down to, under relaxation, about 10 per minute.
Yeah.
Is that okay? They are always there for advice. It's a marvellous support to know that there are people that you can ring up really at any time who have your interests at heart. They know what has happened to you. They know what you're going through, and they can advise you. Okay, that's fine.
Very good.
That's fine. Okay, I'm pleased at that. I think as a personality, I've been through two changes. The first change was the situation when I was on the beta-blocking drugs after what you might call the normal conventional treatment at the hospital. And there I was looking forward to no real existence at all. But the prospect that I have of where I'm going to end up in a few months' time when I complete the therapy is to be like I was perhaps 5 years ago, perhaps 10 years ago. It's really a very exciting prospect. It's almost a rejuvenation, if you like. The change in my attitude towards my behavior and my interaction with people around me has been very dramatic. I've realized the need to not become, in a sense, so self-centered and obsessive about work. I need to balance that off with other activities and with proper relaxation. I feel very excited about the future. I feel very optimistic about the future. And I know that I can get back, given a few months, to a very active existence and a very effective existence, much better than I was before the heart attack. I wouldn't say it was a sense of my own mortality. I would say it was a condition that I had got very close to death, to the extent that what happened to me, the heart going into spasm, could have killed me. I was very lucky it didn't. What I aim to do now is to make sure that that doesn't happen again.
There was a building society that forever...
It's not only Dr. Nixon's therapies that are unusual. It's his attitude to the causes of heart attacks that others don't share. He sees a heart attack not as a bolt from the blue, but as a predictable outcome of an exhausted life. It's less heart disease, rather the heart not at ease.
Hello, Jean. I've got a problem for you.
Thank you very much.
Now the policeman, backed up, hyperventilating.
This belief that it is as much the mind as it is the body that affects the functioning of the heart leads Dr. Nixon to unorthodox attitudes to smoking, to diet, and to the role of education.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, that's all.
Can I have some else? So instead of risk factors being regarded as causative, we're coming to see them as the product of people living in a society where the strains of adaptation are so high that they're living overtired and overstressed, brewing up blood pressure, brewing up high cholesterol levels, and wanting to smoke, because smoking is rather effective. First of all, it enables you to concentrate and make fewer mistakes when you're over the top and overtired and strained. And secondly, it reduces the aggressive chemical impulses of adrenaline and cortisol inside. And if you made a drug that did what cigarettes did, it'd probably make the same profit. I'm not saying smoking is a good thing, but doctors should look after people whose blood pressure and cholesterol is up, who need to smoke, and not dismiss them as messy eaters and dirty smokers. had actually enabled them to get back comfortably onto the upslip and be comfortable livers in the world and not under such levels of effort and distress as to self-destruct. And I'm very sorry that health education does not look at that issue, because 9 out of 10 people I have with high cholesterols and high blood pressures sink to normal when they're properly rested. Then we can use the educative process to go back to their tasks, perhaps with 100% energy instead of 50% energy, without rebrewing these abnormalities. If you're an epidemiologist and you really think that smoking cigarettes and eating too much cholesterol and not exercising enough and being too fat cause heart attacks, then you'll set up propaganda machines for working along those lines. But if you really believe that we ourselves are responsible for injuring ourselves through sheer blind ignorance and a willingness to struggle beyond tolerance, then there's so much to teach the individual. So this is now being called, if you like, personal rehabilitation or bespoke or psychosocial, perhaps, as opposed to conventional.
There is a need for much more cardiac rehabilitation in the UK. The British Heart Foundation is at the forefront of the campaign. What's the emphasis on the treatment they favour, and how do they assess Nixon's work?
I don't think one can really assess effectiveness unless you actually compare one program with another, and unfortunately that hasn't been done. So we don't have an actual scientific method. I mean, we do have the methods, but they haven't been used to assess the success of that program, and until one's done that, one can't say. There have been other people who've done programs comparing psychosocial programs with physical programs, and some of them have suggested that psychosocial are more important. But that hasn't been done with Dr. Nixon's approach. There are only about 120 rehabilitation programs in the country, and there need to be something like 300. The biggest problem is that each program needs a dedicated person, a dynamic person, to run the program. Many of the basic facilities already exist. The doctors exist, the nurses exist, the physiotherapists, occupational therapists, so forth. The gymnasia are often there. The equipment is often there. What one really wants is somebody whose job it is to do this. And I think that's the most important element that's missing in most of our hospitals.
In contrast to Nixon's approach, the rehabilitation at London Bridge Hospital concentrates on correcting conventional risk factors and regaining fitness through exercise. Dr. Hugh Bethel.
Well, the approach I take actually grew out of working with Peter Nixon many years ago, and he was, I think, the first person in this country to use exercise for coronary patients, although he also has been very much involved in the psychological aspect of the causation and rehabilitation of heart attacks and heart surgery. I have moved a bit away from that. I've become much more mechanistic, and that's a pragmatic approach because I can deal with many more people if I deal with them in that sort of way. And I am more of a mechanist than he is. We use exercise because it restores physical capacity and it restores self-confidence, and almost certainly it has a protective effect in the long term. Heart attacks are caused by blockage of a coronary artery, and that isn't something that happens suddenly from one cause. It's something that happens gradually over a long period, from early teens probably, and has very many different contributory factors, things like family history, age and gender. If you're male, and the older you are, the more likely it is to happen. Things like whether or not you smoke cigarettes. Cigarette smoking is a powerful risk factor, as is having a raised blood pressure and having a raised blood cholesterol. So diet and other things that raise cholesterol, such as stress, will have an effect as well. And finally, of course, lack of exercise. People who've had heart attacks or had heart surgery for coronary artery disease have often been extremely unhealthy people for a long time before the attack or the surgery. They've been smokers, they've been overweight, their diet has been all wrong, they've been living stressful lives. They have been at a fairly low level and low ebb, physically as well as mentally, before the attack. A period of rest with the attack, followed by the supervised rehabilitation, they may end up a heap fitter than they've been for years before. They've given up smoking, they're eating better, they're thinner, they're more relaxed. If you handle them correctly, that's the sort of effects you get. And I remember one patient of mine said, well, that heart attack, that was the making of me.
An exercise program is important psychologically for demonstrating to somebody that they're often fitter than they think they are. And actually exercise is a very good way of combating stress, so that the different aspects are complementary and not in competition.
Given in diluted water, 3 grams per
Peter Bundell is a schoolmaster. He had heart surgery 8 months ago and came to Bethel for rehabilitation. Although the aim of the rehabilitation may not have been to get him to rethink his lifestyle, during the many hours he spent here, he did have time to do so.
One of the things that did come out of sitting here for 6 months was realizing that I had a young lad who was growing up incredibly fast. And if I reviewed the last 9 years, I considered that I hadn't spent enough time with him, and I hadn't spent enough time talking to him. And so I think one of the things that's come out of this is a determination to spend more time with him, more time working with him, more time listening to him, and perhaps being more patient with him, and doing things together, just enjoying things together.
I think different programs emphasize different components. Some dwell very much on the psychosocial side, and others dwell particularly on the physical side, but I think they need to contain all those elements.
Start noticing your breathing. Notice how deeply or how shallowly you're breathing.
Alison Jesson is in charge of rehabilitation at St George's Hospital in South London.
But just notice what your
She's designed the
breathing's
kind
like.
of combined treatment that the British Heart Foundation are advocating.
Now we're going to go through the different muscle groups of the body. What I really believe about cardiac rehabilitation is trying to put the patient back in charge of their lives. It's very often when people come into hospital that they almost abdicate responsibility because there are other experts around who are going to take over, and that's fair enough. And it's really a question of trying to get the patients to start saying, right, now I'm back in charge again and I want to make changes in my life if that's necessary, and give them the feeling of being in power again. We try and run sort of middle-of-the-road rehabilitation programs so that we try and get an equal balance between the exercise, the relaxation and the group discussion. From what I know of Peter Nixon's work, there is a very big emphasis on the psychological aspects of recovery. And I know he does quite a lot of exercise work, but it's probably not, the emphasis isn't as great as it is in our program. And Dr. Bethel's work has a very big emphasis on the exercise part and probably less on the relaxation and psychological recovery. So we probably take a very sort of middle approach. And I think they both have very good positive points. And obviously the program that we run here, I think, combines both of their approaches into a more balanced viewpoint. I think when somebody's had either a heart attack or heart surgery, it's a really life-threatening experience, and they really come face to face with their own mortality, and possibly coupled with the age that they're at, is they really start sort of reappraising their lives for the first time. And often they are very keen to find a cause, such as smoking or being overweight, that they can pin this on, and then they can say, well, if I change that, what are my chances? Am I going to live longer? Am I going to have a healthier life? And in the majority of cases, the answer is definitely yes.
One of Alison Jesson's current patients is Ken Noden. He's a tough business consultant called in to save firms from bankruptcy. While working here in Newbury 4 months ago, he had a heart attack. Although decisive in business, Ken is less so in his private life. He and his wife had not been getting on well for many years, but Ken had been unable to decide whether or not to get divorced, and this was a continuing source of stress. It was fortunate that when he collapsed, he was working with Peter Lydiard. Peter had coped with his father's heart attack, so he knew what to do. Peter's quick action in getting Ken to hospital probably saved his life. Ken had a coronary bypass operation, and a month later started on Alison Jesson's course. The kindness and affection he received in the hospital made him aware how sterile his home life had become. In hospital, Ken ended his ambivalence towards the unhappy marriage and decided to get divorced.
It is quite an important factor, is the family support or lack of in heart disease, and obviously you have had quite a big problem, and it's something that I've come across before where marital problems have really been instrumental in somebody maybe coming to surgery a bit earlier than they might otherwise, or causing a heart attack, and it is very distressing.
I'm trying to turn that shock into a blessing, into something positive, and recognize that I've been lucky, and to look at it in that way, and to ask myself, what can I do to help myself? And I think better eating habits, certainly more physical exercise, and making plans to take this marital stress out of my lifestyle completely. I was obviously handling the relationship with my wife probably in not the best way, but it certainly always seemed to come back to one issue: marital stress. The doctor explained very simply that as a body I couldn't sustain the attack all day of pressure and then come home at night time and have more pressure. I still love my wife, but is she worth dying for? The answer is no. The answer is no. It has to be no. Until I get my divorce and all this thing settled and physically get out of that house, I really can't make any plan to do things that I want to do properly. Allied to the business side of my life, having a heart attack has reduced the timescales. Before, I kept thinking, well, it's all right. If it doesn't get done now, it'll get done a bit later. That's gone. I'm sure all the people I'm working with have realized that I am being very pushy and very aggressive and very determined to bring negotiations, various things I'm involved in, to conclusions. Either way, even if it doesn't work out to suit me, I don't want to indefinitely just keep talking about it. If I have to be selfish now, I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to think about Ken Noden. Ken Noden, when I was in my 20s, was so determined, and if I could do you a favor, that was fine, I'd do it. But only if it suited me. And I think that the last 20 years, I've been far too benevolent.
I think it's very often, a heart attack is very often a very positive thing. A lot of people, in a sense, reassess their lives. They're 40 or 50 or 60, and they suddenly start thinking what life is all about. Very often they take a new lease of life. They take an interest in exercise. They take a new interest in a lot of activities. Some people retire when they've been fed up with their work. So for a lot of people, if they get over the attack physically, which of course doesn't happen to everybody, some people are very impaired physically afterwards, but those who recover from it physically often get back to a more enjoyable life than they've had before.
The use of a heart attack is very important, because when I quit heart surgery and the development of heart-lung machines and intensive care, there were no guidelines for the proper usage of a heart attack. So I picked as many people as I could find, 30 people, who had had a heart attack more than 10 years before, who were playing games of one sort or another, and who'd done well in their careers, and looked back and said the heart attack was when I got it organized.
I think it's partly that somebody's taking a notice of them, they're taking a personal interest in them, they're providing moral and physical, well, moral support perhaps particularly, And I think it's this encouragement that people are getting, which is perhaps the most important thing, whether it's physical or psychological. And I think that's what people need most, is a feeling of continuity, somebody caring about them and answering their problems.
Well, I would say 10, 15 years ago, I was a very shy, quiet person. Could never say no to anybody. Didn't matter whether it was a little thing or a big thing. If anybody came and said, Dorothy, would you do this? Straight away I would jump. Now, after having the heart attack, I don't do that anymore. When I say no, I mean no. I've got the confidence now to talk to people. If any problems come up, I can handle them.
In the case of someone like Mrs. Allen, she is enjoying a quality of life now that she hasn't enjoyed for 10 or 15 years. The great shame is that such a redirection process has to come about through such pain and such risk.
Oh, it's like watching flowers grow. Basically, they become pink. And like the friend we saw a little while ago, they're able people sitting, you know, straight on the bottoms, not chips on the shoulders, not wound up, angry, able to talk, able to take a fairly relaxed view about things.
For me, there's just this sheer feeling of God, I'm just so lucky to be alive. And I remember I went for a run a little while ago, and I'd done about 5 miles. I came home, I was doing a warming down set of exercises outside on the patio, and I came into the lounge here. I was exhausted, I was dripping. And I came into the lounge, and I just lay down on the floor, and the sun was shining, streaming through the window. It's like a warm, enveloping blanket somehow that just coasts over you. And I just cried. I just cried. It was just so wonderful. The whole of your body was tingling. You were alive. All the muscles were pulsing. And I'm there. I'm back, if you like. For the first time, I started to feel I'm fit. I'm beginning to feel fit. And it's beautiful. It's the best thing that ever happened.
Yes, I think some people do definitely make gains in their spiritual values and their way of life from having had a heart attack. One of the ways of assessing how well rehabilitation is going is to see how quickly people get back to work. But that is not an approach I take, because I believe that it is a sensible opportunity for people to take a reasonable period off to reassess the sort of lives they live. And many people do this, and they do, I'm sure, benefit by realigning themselves, by getting themselves into a way of life which is not as impossible as it had been before the attack. And many people take the opportunity to retire early, for instance, which may not be strictly necessary on a physical basis, but may be highly desirable for them as people. Other people just change the way they live. They learn to delegate more, they learn to relax more, they learn to enjoy their leisure. They learn to rethink their relationships.
Not that one just yet, are we? This one here. Well, purely and simply, I think that since the operation and since I spent 6 months at home, I've obviously spent a lot more time with Craig, with Fiona, and enjoyed that time, because I haven't been sidetracked by other things that have occupied my mind. And looking back on it, I would say, prior to the operation, I was, how can I put this? I was probably selfish with my time. And I would have argued with you. I'd have said, no, I spent enough time with my family, I spent enough time with my wife, I spent enough time with my son. I'd have said, yeah, I do all of that.
I think the thing that's been most noticeable, if you like, is how much closer we are. We've always been close. We've always been a married couple that has shared a lot of things. It's not been a case of Peter going off doing his thing and me doing my thing. We've always shared a lot, but I think we're even closer now.
Looking back on it, I think there were undoubtedly times when I was selfish and when I pushed them to one side in order to achieve what I wanted to get.
I'm just so grateful to have him. because I nearly didn't. And most of the time you cope with that, and you don't think about it. But when he has little comments like that, it brings it back to you that I could have been sitting today without a husband, and you know, half of me wouldn't be here. And the fact he's here is just wonderful.
Well, we're moving on, right?
Was it her fault? Was it my fault? What is the point? It's over. I have to move on, and I have to move ahead. And the back of my mind is the question of how many years am I good for? Who knows that? I don't know that answer, but I've got no intention of dwelling on it. I want to start day one, and as quickly as possible, get on with my life without recrimination. There'll be a natural period that I'll vent my spleen and cry about it, but I'm not going to make it too long.
I had a warning. It was a warning which I guess could have killed me, and it didn't, and it did not cause any permanent damage. But it did make me address the way that I was behaving. It made me realize that my life had taken a turn for the worst and was going in the wrong direction. I can now correct that. I've been taught through the people at Charing Cross how to correct that, and I'm going to get back into a situation where I am going to be much better than I have been for years and years. It really is the best thing that's happened to me.
Well, put it this way, I was 50 in March, and when I said to people I should be 50 in March, they kind of looked, you know, and I said, oh, I said, I'm going to live it up, you know, and they couldn't understand this attitude. A lot of people are frightened of growing old. After having this heart trouble, I'm not frightened of growing old. And my 50th birthday meant a lot to me. And every year is a bonus. Well, every day is a bonus as far as I'm concerned.